Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for coming on. I am Michelle O'Connor. We're on to day 16 of our Business Growth Challenge. And as you come on, I would love to know where you're joining from. And I'd also love to know about your business, what type of business you have. As we go through, we often use the businesses as example. Now, we have been going through our 30-day business growth challenge. And if you're new here, I am Michelle O'Connor and I'm a business growth strategist. And I help entrepreneurs to develop business growth plans so they see themselves showing up running profitable businesses with less burnout and overwhelm. And I decided to do this because one of the things I was getting from our entrepreneurs is time is a challenge for them. And so, if time is a challenge, we thought let's break up the planning and execution process in bite sized pieces so you can come on, you get something to do every day, and then we build slowly. Now, you would have, if you've been here for the past 2 weeks or the past 15 days, today's day 16, we worked on the process of planning, setting targets, identifying the goals that you want to focus on. And now we're moving into the second half, which is the execution. How do I now get things done? I know a lot of persons have beautiful plans that they have documented, they have documents stored somewhere in their business, but getting it done is where the challenge is. And execution is what gives, I say to persons, execution is what gives your plan legs. Execution is where it all happens. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit from a book that I read maybe over 10 years ago that is still relevant today. And it's called The Four Disciplines of Execution. And it's important because, and I think when I remember when we got into reviewing this book and giving this book to the entire leadership team in our organization, it was because we were stuck. We had the plans, we had paid a huge consultant that a lot of us read their articles. We had paid a consultant, they came in, they did all the things that needed to be done. But when they left, we were still stuck. We weren't achieving anything. And so the four disciplines of execution, which is the 4DX, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to show you quickly what the book looks like. I recommend it. I recommend that you get it because this is what is going to help you. This is the revised edition. Yeah, I think I had it up. So therefore, this is what the book looks like. No, I'm not doing that. This is the four disciplines of execution. I highly recommend that you get it. It helps you to think about how you're growing your business differently. And so I'm going to be sharing with you what the summary of what that book is. And it's important that at this point where we're going into execution, that you understand what you're going to be doing next. It's all good for us to have all the plans. It's all good for us to know all the things that we're going to be doing. It's very good that we've created all these ideas, but now that you've created the ideas, then what? What is going to cause me to stand out above the rest? So we're going to go into the four disciplines of execution. I pulled out from it the key points that I think would be relevant based on where we are, and then we'll go into the rest of the week building our execution plans, right? So the four disciplines of execution helps us to narrow down our thinking on what is important. So you're operating a business, there's always going to be a list of things that's pulling on you, pulling on your focus and pulling on your energy. But how do you decide what to do? How do you decide what to do that's going to cause the most impact in your business based on the goals that you have? So the four disciplines of execution, 4DX as we call it, is it focuses on four things. One, you need to select your widely important goals, and we're going to go into what that is. The second thing that it speaks of is act on lead measures. Now, we would have done a whole session on lead and lag measures, but we'll get into just some high points from that. The third thing that it speaks of is keeping a compelling scorecard. We also did a session on scorecard. I gave you some examples what your scorecard could look like. And the last thing is having a cadence of accountability, which is having an accountability framework that you're going to be using throughout your business. So as I go through for selecting your widely important goals, what are those, you may ask? Now, if you recall where we ended on Friday, that was day 15. If you're just joining, you can always watch the replay. The videos are there. When we ended day 15, we ended with a list of activities. We had goals. We had a lot of goals that we came up with. And that is what your planning process does. It allows you to create ideas that can help you to achieve your goal. And remember, one of the things I've been saying to you is don't get too caught up as yet on what you are going to be focusing on or which goal. Let's work through, let's get all the ideas out, let's get them on the table, and we're going to use our processes now to decide where our focus goes. Now, when we ended there, you now want to think of, okay, I have all of these goals, hoping that you did your homework. We have all of these goals. Now what? How do we decide what to focus on? And there was a quote in the book that I've highlighted that I want to read to you. One of the things it says, in determining your widely important goals, don't ask what's important. Instead, begin by asking if every other area of our operation remained at its current level of performance, what's one area where change would have the greatest impact? Now, when you think of that, you're asking yourself, if everything in my business remained the same and I was change just one thing and have a massive impact, what would that area be? When you ask the question like that, you're now able to identify, not moving from a place of just raw emotion, but moving from a place of impact. This is the thing that we're going to change. We need to change our onboarding process. We would be able to grow more if our clients were able to connect with us better. If we could reach more people, how do we reach them now? Let's work on our marketing and our communication. So that is how you decide what your widely important goals are. So when you're looking at the list of goals that we documented over the past few weeks, now is what we call prioritization. And this is what is going to help you with that, because you're now going to be looking at the list and you are selecting the things that you know from all the information you have. Because remember, we spoke about hypothesis. Things that you know will have the greatest impact. And those are the goals. Why is it important? Now you might be asking. This week, we're going into building that execution framework. And I wanted to pause and do this today so you can understand the lens that I want you to be looking through when you're looking at your goals and when you're selecting the goals that you're going to be working on. So those are the questions that you want to ask. And there were a few guidelines that they gave when you're looking and selecting your wildly important goals. No team should focus on more than 2 goals at the same time. I know you're talented. I know you can multitask. I know you do a lot and all that thing. But guess what? What's happening to a lot of us is that we're doing a lot of things that we're not doing one thing well. You constantly have to be stopping in between because you didn't think about this. You forgot to write down this part of the process. You didn't get to do this. The dependencies that you have, the other persons on your team that are supposed to be helping you, they were also doing other things. So do not be working on more than 2 things at the same time. Any questions? Remember, guys, thank you for coming on. If at any point in time you have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. And also, if you want to connect with me at any point in time, I'm also going to be dropping my calendar here. You can go ahead and schedule your call and I'll be happy to have a conversation to see how I can help you one-on-one. So no team is focusing on more than 2 goals at the same time. And one of the things that I love that was in the book, it said, the battles you choose must win the war. So that is why I remember the first thing is you're looking at everything on your business. This is your business. If I was to change one thing, what would have massive impact? It's going to win the war. Those are the battles that we're going after right now. When you look at your list, you're choosing that one. All WIGs must have a finish line. So we're moving from point A to point B. It's not never ending. Sometimes in project management, we call it scope creep. Don't keep adding things and changing and redefining. Let's work on this one thing and let's work on it and work on it well. Another thing you want to remember, as the leader, you are able to Give your impact, say yes or say no because you're accountable, but allow your team the room and the latitude to make decisions and to make changes as they go along. You don't want to cause yourself overwhelm. You want to equip your team to have the room to make their changes. So the first thing was widely important goals. Now the second one, which we spent a whole session on, was focus on your lead indicators. Now this is where you have the most leverage. Remember that when we talked about lead indicators, your lead indicators, they do two things. They predict and they influence. What do I mean by that? If it is that one of your lead indicators, you have a lead indicator that speaks. So let's say you have a target of increasing your revenue and you're hosting a workshop that's going to bring persons in. The number of persons who register for that workshop is a lead indicator. It's saying to you, this number of people have already registered. So this is giving me an indication as to how many people will show up. Because 100% is not going to show up half the time unless they pay a lot of money. But and even when persons pay, things happen. It's an indication of what the end result is going to be. You are able to change your lead indicators. You're able to manage them. If this isn't based on the result that you're having right now, it's indicating to you that the end result that you are looking for is going to be challenging, or you're heading in the right direction. That is what your lead indicators does. I use a very simple example that we can all relate to. If it is you're trying to adjust your weight, whether you're trying to gain or you're trying to lose, a lead indicator is probably what you're eating. A lead indicator is how many days you're exercising, because the final indication as to whether or not you've achieved your goal is the weight that's on the scale. So you're thinking about what are all the other things that will impact this. So focus on your lead indicators. And we did a session on KPIs. We did a session on lead and lag. We gave various examples. We worked through all of that last week. So that's the second one. Focus on your lead indicator. That is where you have leverage. You can manage that. You can change that. You can influence it before the end of the period, right? So we're going to be doing that. Now, the third thing is keeping a compelling scorecard. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating, but I feel very proud that I did these things even before I remember this book. I remembered it over the weekend and I thought to myself, you know what? Let me do a session on this, because I think at this point in time, it ties together all the work that we're doing and then gives us the next step to go into execution. So you know what lens we're going on. So keep a compelling scorecard. When we say keep a compelling scorecard, your scorecard is what gives you an indication as to what you want to achieve, where you are, and allow you to make decisions on what do I need to change. However, your scorecard needs to have a few things. We showed you some examples. So your scorecard, it needs to be simple. Don't have it too complicated where you look at it and you're not able to understand what it's saying. Keep it simple. You want to be able to see it easily. When we spoke about scorecard or creating your scorecard, one of the things I encouraged you to do is, or not to do, don't set targets that you're not able to measure. There's no system in place to measure it. Because what you want to do, you want to be able to see the results. You want someone to be able to gather the information, pull the information from wherever it is, put it together in a way that you can easily see it. As a CEO and the founder, you are able to easily access, okay, this is where we are. Because remember, you need to be so intimate with your numbers that you can just talk about it. You know what decisions you're making. You know where you're going. You need to be able to talk about it. Your scorecard needs to show you your lead and your lag measures. We said that in our weeks gone by. And can I tell where I am at a glance? And that is why the goals, the targets, the measures, all of those things that you have on it, it can't be too much. We spoke about choosing 2 or 3 KPIs for your business that's telling you a story. While you may be measuring profit, you know what's included in profit. So when you see the number, you can tell. You may want a profit, you may want a revenue, you may want efficiency, whatever targets you decide on. It needs to tell you a story at a glance. You want to be able to ensure that that's happening for your scorecard. And you create it the way we spoke about using Excel and the different applications, but keep a compelling scorecard. And the last thing is you want to create a cadence for accountability. And what that means is ensure that you have an accountability framework in place. What does that look like, you might ask? This is where execution comes in, and this is where we're now going to be moving to the next level. We're going into the next phase of the challenge. You're having your meetings. You keep your commitment to your meetings. If you are supposed to have a sales meeting every week, you're going to be having that sales meeting every week, even if it's one person. Also, even if you're not available, and this is how, as a leader, you equip other persons, you rotate the persons who are leading those sessions, because what you're doing is that you're building. And I wrote something down that I want to share with you. Without consistent accountability, the goals fade away. So if I know, oh, we might meet, we might not meet, I don't need to prepare my report. I don't need to, as a team member, I don't need to be very focused on where I am, because next week we might have a meeting, we might not have a meeting. You want to make sure that that's consistent. You want to ensure that if you have coaching sessions with your team and you have a set time, you're having those conversations, you're having those meetings, you're asking for the results. We were supposed to be here by this date. Where are we today? You're having those conversations. You're getting the responses. When you get the response, you're now able to make decisions on what you do next. So you want to have your meetings, your coaching sessions, you want to have your reports that are submitted, and they are submitted the very same day each time. Create that consistent accountability framework that allows your company and your organization to run smoothly. And tracking your performance, and that is where your dashboard comes in, because you're tracking your performance so you can enter that information in your dashboard. And that is how it all fits together nicely when we talk about, the disciplines of execution. And you will hear different persons call it 4DX. I love it. I think it's a very simple way for an organization to think about how they're moving their ideas, because we're stuck in the whirlwind sometimes, as they say. There are many activities that are coming at us, but how do you now focus? The book goes on to talk about challenges and implementing the 4DX principle and all of that, but I wanted you to just have this summary view as we move into the phase of execution. So when we talk about building that execution framework, I'm going to be selecting the ones that are very important. I need to make sure I can create a dashboard for this. I have lead and lag indicators, and I also have an accountability framework that I'm implementing, and I'm going to be consistent with it. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, day 16 of our challenge. As we go into the next half, we're going to be building out execution. This is where you win. This is where things happen. You take your ideas now and you're going to prioritize them and ensure that you're able to track and measure. Any questions before I go? Any questions? Let me just check. Do we have any questions? All right, no questions so far. I know that it might sound there are a lot of things, but that is why we broke it down in 30 days. So you're able to consume this today, and then tomorrow we'll continue. So thank you so much for coming on. If again you are joining and you have questions, I've dropped my calendar in the comments. I'm available to work with you one-on-one to help you to build that strategy for your business. So by the time you enter 2026, you're very clear on the goals you're going after for yourself and your team. Your targets are set. You know where you want to be. And so I invite you to book a consultation call with me so I can have that conversation with you offline. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining again. If you're watching the replay, you can also go ahead and drop your questions below. We do go back and check. All right, guys, have a great week.